Hey everybody, Quantum here, and I know a lot of you have been waiting for this, but we are finally getting around to doing our set review of ARCHAZIA'S Island. So in this video, we're going to be taking a look at Amber. You know, it's not a bad thing to wait a little bit. We've had some time to read through the cards, think about them a little bit. Everything is now populated on Dreamborn, which makes it a lot easier for this video to just sift through the cards. So hopefully you enjoy this, sit back, relax. You know, each of these videos for each of the ink pairings that I will post is probably going to be over 30 minutes. So if you want to see the review of what's going to be meta competitive, etc., make sure you subscribe for the other ink pairings when they're posted, and of course for deck lists and matches later on. Let's go ahead and jump straight in though. The first card we have here is Rhino, Motivational Speaker, a 6 cost uninkable 4/7. Destiny Calling ability, your other characters get +2 willpower, and it quests for 2. I don't think this card will see play because in the Amber Steel ink pairing, which if you don't know, you can only play this in an Amber Steel deck. You can't play this in like an Amber Ruby deck or a Steel Sapphire deck because you have to play the dual ink cards in the ink colors that the ink is a dual ink for. So in Amber Steel, I really think that the best way to play this deck in set 7, at least in the start of the meta, is going to be low to the ground. I do think Steel Song finally gets power crept out of the meta as a top tier deck, and we can explain that once we get to the ink pairings that will, in my opinion, just outright dominate Steel Song. We saw Amber Steel come back into the meta when it went low to the ground with Brendan DeCanio's deck, and a deck like that will not play a card that is such a liability like Rhino. Even though the ability is decent, it quests for 2, it has good stats, the 6 cost on ink ability just kills it. So no Rhino in any Amber Steel decks, in my opinion, at least for the meta competitive ones. Next up, we're getting a lot of puppy support in the form of Amber Sapphire decks. So this is interesting to see. And I think this deck might have some interesting application. Not a top tier deck or anything by any means, but definitely a viable, maybe casual deck and a very fun deck to play that can still do work in against meta decks potentially, but definitely not going to like be taking any tournaments or anything I wouldn't expect. But yeah, we have a 4 cost inkable Perdita Playful Mother, a 1/4, so a very underwhelming stat line. I would have loved to see Ward on this card, or maybe this ability is whenever this character quests, you may pay 2 less for the next puppy character you play this turn. I guess at that point you'd make it a legendary, and I don't know if you want another Perdita legendary, but like, just if you wanted to make it more competitive, you can have the ability of like this character gains ward when it's exerted. Um, but then it's, yeah, I guess it gives it one turn where it's susceptible to being like Sisu'd or brawled away. It quests for 2, so that's good for a 4 cost inkable card. And then your puppy characters gain ward. And then maybe have this ability as an on play effect and have the ward ability on quest, then it would have been a little bit better, because then your opponent is forced to challenge into this. And like, I mean, you're questing with this anyways because it quests for 2, so it's not like you're questing with it just for this ability. But being able to like play this and play a puppy in the same turn is really good, like tempo. Because in Amber Sapphire you can also play a lot of the very good draw cards as well. So like the card advantage that you lose from the double play would have been probably negligible in the end. And then you have some other good puppy synergy cards, which we'll take a look at later. But yeah, in its current form, it's not bad. But if you wanted to make it more competitive, like that's what you could have done, it in my opinion. Next up, we got Stefan, a 5 cost inkable 4/7 vanilla that quests for 1, so really only for draft. Next up, you've got Bolt, a 5 cost inkable 3/5 body. And, you know, we used to talk about 3 strength being like the Medusa check. Does it pass? Well, obviously it doesn't pass, but like, is it worth playing if it gets outed by Medusa? That's not really a thing that you have to worry about too much anymore. Medusa's kind of fallen out of the format. It's just a liability card into a lot of decks, right? You've seen like Red Blue cut it completely. Ruby Amethyst doesn't really play it anymore, and I don't think they really go back to it unless there's a really big threat that they look to take out with it, like when Beast Tragic Hero was a big thing in previous metas. Anyways, it's a shift 3, mark of power. Whenever you ready this character, gain 1 lore for each other undamaged character you have in play. So a very slow card. You have to shift it, quest with it, and then wait till the next turn to ready it. You have a couple ways, obviously, in Amber to ready cards up. Not really anything that you'd want to play like a dual interaction with, because in an Amber Steel deck, you don't have any forms of like ramp unless you want to play like Lantern. But you know, you're not playing this and then a Sven, right? Like, you're not shifting this for 3 and then playing a Sven for 4 to ready this back up and then gain a ton of lore. And then it has another ability which probably is negligible, but you banish chosen illusion character, but it does quest for 2. What you could do with a card like this is something like Judy Hopps. So you would have a bolt on board ready to shift, and then you'd have a Judy Hopps. You shift the bolt, you quest with it, and then Judy in the end phase will ready the bolt up, and then you gain a bunch of lore for every character, every undamaged character you have in play is maybe what you could do. But again, that requires a lot of setup. And in an Amber Steel deck, are you really playing Judy Hopps? We just talked about not going to 6 ink. I mean, this one's uninkable. Judy Hopps is inkable, but it's probably too much of a far-fetched combo. So maybe for a casual deck. I mean, the one thing I will say, like the Shift 3 for getting a 5-cost Singer on board is decent, but I don't think you're gonna be playing the Bolt package unless the Bolt that you want to shift onto is really good. And I don't think the one in Amber is good. Maybe the one in Steel is good. When we get to it, we'll take a look at that. Roger Radcliffe, 1-cost puppy support, dog lover, 1/2 stat line. Whenever this character quests, you may remove up to 1 damage from each of your puppy characters. Puppies are what, 2/3 bodies? Can we take a look at classifications? Let's see what puppies we're working with here. Oh, we're kind of spoiling it onto the Sapphire side. So you got all of the puppies from the Into the Inkland set. You've got Lucky, which is also a 2/3 that costs 4 and it's uninkable. You've got Patch, and you've got Raleigh, or Rolly. Rolly, I think is his name, right? I think you still only play like these 2-cost 2/3 bodies, maybe the Lucky as well. It's hard. I don't know. We'd have to really consider how you'd build a puppy deck, but I don't really see this being all that relevant. It has to quest to get the ability off. The puppies being 2/3 does help though, because that extra, not being like a 2-cost 2/2 is not really that great. So it's okay, but again, I think you'd probably just play better cards in an Amber Sapphire deck, even in a puppy deck. Next up, you got Thrusty Loyal Bloodhound, 2-cost inkable 2/2 that has support quest for 1, so not relevant. You got Peg next, the first Amber Emerald hybrid card, 3-cost inkable 2/4 body. You exert it. If you have 3 or more other characters in play, draw a card. Way too slow for this ink pairing. That's either going to be aggro focused or discard focused. You're not going to play that card, so let's move on. Suzy, Master Seamstress, one of the best characters in Cinderella, making that dress out of like nothing. One of the best scenes in Cinderella, by the way. 4-cost, if not the best scene. 4-cost inkable 3/4 body that quests for 2. Okay stats. They could have given my girl Suzy a little bit more, but it's okay. Next up, you got Mittens, Sassy Street Cat, a 5-cost uninkable 4/5 body with bodyguard, so giving you Maximus 5s from the first chapter, just not being inkable. No support, but it does quest for 2. I think Maximus only quests for 1. And then once during your turn, whenever a card is put into your inkwell, your other characters with bodyguard get +1 lore this turn. This is actually, in my opinion, a pretty decent effect. I did play bodyguards up on, I think even in set where we got the bodyguard Mickey legendary, and I actually took some games off of meta decks when I was playing it, to my surprise, because Musketeer's Tabard is just an insane card if you do set it up and your opponent doesn't like aggro you out, because you'll play around all of the removal, well, all the banishing removal that the other decks play to refill your hand, and then you can still aggro them out. So if you get the Tabard set up, it could be really, really strong. And then this card just setting up like potentially massive lore gain, because your opponent, like, I remember playing matches where my opponent specifically tried to get under me, and they were like, I'm not challenging into your bodyguard because I don't want to give you like draw 2 with your 2 Tabards up. And I think I lost a couple of those games, but definitely if I had a card like this, just drop this and they let all of like 5 or 6 bodyguards live, and then now they all quest for like 2 or 3. It's like, yeah, I come back and I win that game. So that's kind of cool. It also quests for 2 and it has a good stats, but it is uninkable. The Tabard is uninkable. So yeah, definitely something that I think we can experiment with in the future, but a card that I think is worth looking at. Definitely not a bad card in my opinion. I mean, the stats, it being uninkable and costing so much does hurt, but maybe you can play this in like you're gonna play it in Amber Steel, right? Because of the ramp. So yeah, you're playing this on 5. You're not really playing it any earlier. Next up, you've got Tramp, 7-cost inkable 2/6 body that is an Amber Emerald hybrid card. For each character you have in play, you pay 1 less ink to play this character. So you will play this. I mean, I shouldn't say you will. This card has potential in both Amber Emerald discard as well as Amber Emerald aggro. A quest for 2, you can potentially play this for 3 or 4 ink, maybe even less, but probably around 3 or 4 ink is what your target is going to be. And then it has a very good ability, in my opinion. When you play this character, you may draw a card for each other character you have in play, then choose and discard that many cards. Very relevant for discard because you're searching for your Koda Under the Sea combo, and this can help facilitate that by you scrying through your deck. It can help feed aggro decks by setting up even for something like a Chernobog return, putting Lilos in discard, just having a 2/6 body that quests for 2 on turn like 4, turn 3 even maybe, because if you go like 1-drop and then turn 2 double 1-drop and then turn 3, well, you wouldn't play this on turn 3, then yeah, you play it on turn 4, right? So yeah, potentially some really interesting interactions here. It doesn't get you any card advantage, but it helps you set up your hand very nicely, which is kind of cool. And again, it's a decent, like if you play this for cheap, like you get a good body on board for a relatively cheap cost, which is really good. Next up, you got the Troubadour, a 2-cost inkable 1/3 body that has resist +1 and Singer 4. So right away, I think that this power creeps Ursula. Ursula is a 1/4 body. That's a Singer 4. It's a 2-cost inkable. I think the resist is better than the extra willpower. You're not really using the Ursula name for anything in Steel Song, if I can remember. So I think playing this is just more resilient. They all get blown out by Ruby removal, so it doesn't really matter. At least this card potentially survives multiple challenges and other Steel Songs that might go into it. So to me, it's a power creep on Cinderella. Uncommon, not bad, but definitely worth picking up if you think of playing Steel Song. Next up, you got Wendy Darling, and this is our first Amber Ruby paired card. I've talked about this before if you've watched my videos, so you'll know. I said Amber Ruby really only needs a draw spell to be like a more meta competitive deck. Maybe not top tier given what we've seen come out for the other inks, but it definitely would probably throw it into like tier 1.5 in my opinion. If it because we know how dual ink cards are set up that you have to play them in that ink pairing, it would have been a perfect opportunity to introduce like damage your own character, draw that many cards up to like 3, let's say. In that ink pairing, because then it synergizes with other great cards you play in those inks already, like Rapunzel, and it's another draw spell which this ink pairing desperately needs, and you're not going to abuse a card like that in something like Ruby Amethyst to give it even more really strong draw, etc. So it would have been a perfect opportunity, and I think a Wendy Darling would have been really cool for that. But this card is still cool. It's amazing art, so shoutouts to Joachim Van Gool. I think I'm saying that name correctly, hopefully. But yeah, let's go ahead and take a look at this. This is a 7-cost inkable 5/7 body, so really decent stats. It's got a ton of attributes on it. Dreamborn, Hero, Queen, Pirate, Captain. And what's cool, like what's interesting is like this Ruby Amber ink pairing, there's 3 potential decks that are meta competitive with this ink pairing. But they're all very underwhelming still because of the lack of draw. You have Ruby Amber Princess Queen. You have Ruby Amber Locations, and you have Ruby Amber Mufasa, which is probably the most meta competitive variation of Ruby Amber. And this card, I mean, its stats are very expensive, so I don't know if you play this and everything, but it being a hero, a queen, a pirate, and a captain, and I guess you can say Ruby Amber Pirates, like it fits into like, with its attributes, can fit into like almost any of those decks. Unfortunately, the ability, I mean, the evasive is nice, the quest for 2 is nice, but the ability leaves much to be desired. Whenever one of your other characters is banished, you may remove all damage from chosen character. So it's like, your character has to be banished for you to remove the damage, and there's probably not going to be very much damage to remove, and if you do remove damage, you want to be drawing off of it via Rapunzel. So, for an uncommon card to have this kind of artwork and be this, like, expensive powerhouse card, air quotes, in terms of its stats, it's kind of cool, but I would have loved to see something a little bit more competitive for Ruby Amber. All right, next up you got Mirabel Madrigal. This is our first Amber Amethyst card. It's a 3-cost inkable 1/3, and you finally get a singer in Amethyst, and it is evasive. So obviously, again, you can only play this in the Amber Amethyst ink pairing, and unfortunately, there's not really any good songs that you really want to utilize at 4 or 5 with this card. All of your good Amber and Amethyst songs are more or less especially if you're going to use it in that ink pairing, 3 cost or less. And we can quickly double check and see what it is I'm talking about, because you're probably not singing a cost that costs 2 or less. So I'm not even going to bother with that. But let's do this. Let's go songs. Let's go this. And these are your options right now. So we got one card that's being released in set 7, which we'll get to. That is the only card that's really worth singing with that Madrigal. It could get better over time. You're not playing this. You're not playing this, because this would be used in something like Ruby Amber, where you can take advantage of the -2 strength. But I mean, I guess you could challenge into stuff, but it's like you're not going to try to set up for this kind of combo. Remove up to 3 damage, draw a card, maybe, but again, 3 cost. It costs 3 anyways. Like, there's better things to play on 3 in Amber Amethyst. I mean, yes, I know it's probably meant to be an archetype specific card, since this card being 5 is an archetype specific card, and locking, not locking you, but like, you know, you want to play this in a Madrigal deck. And to be fair, I will say that is the way that these kind of cards should be designed, because we've seen in like games like Yu-Gi-Oh, where you make very powerful generic cards, and it just makes the game like terrible. It makes the game a nightmare to play, because you can have these very strong archetypes like Snake Eyes like abuse these generically powerful cards that may be supposed to be used for another archetype, but you didn't lock them into that archetype, so they can be used in anything. And then it makes those very powerful decks like tier 0 and very not fun to play against. So this is the right way to design cards. So I will give Ravensburger props for that. The World's Greatest, Hakuna Matata, you're not playing. More 3 cost cards, and there's no songs right now to utilize with that card. So I think that right now it's not good, but it's probably still worth picking up for the future. I'll be picking it up for the future. A Madrigal deck could be fun to play at some point, and you never know. They could end up making this a tier 1 deck one day, but probably not. Next up, we've got Aurora Waking Beauty. This is a 3 cost inkable 1/4 body. That's a Singer 5, quest for 2, and then has the ability Sweet Dreams. It is your first legendary in Amber. Whenever you remove 1 or more damage from a character, ready this character. She can't quest or challenge for the rest of this turn. So the goal with a card like this obviously is like quest, sing a song, or play a character, heal some damage, ready it up. And then sing a song. So you get some extra utility out of a card like this. What's interesting is this being a Singer 5 for 3 is another whole new world singing potential that quests for 2. So you have Naveen, you have Aurora. They're really playing on the fact, or they're really playing into that archetype of Steel Song, which, like I mentioned, I do think takes a step back in this set due to some other cards that we'll take a look at later in other videos. But this is good support for Steel Song. The issue, again, is Steel Song is already a very tight and optimized list. Does this card end up replacing what you are already trying to play on 3? Which could be any variation of things like Lawrence, Ariel's, Pete's. I don't think it's good enough for that. Maybe the Lawrence, but like Lawrence being a 4/4 is pretty good. This thing is still very susceptible to Ruby removal, so it's a tough sell, I think, but definitely not worth $25, so don't buy the pre-sales. We'll see. You got another Cinderella here, a 4 cost 2/4 body. When you play this character, you may put an item card named the Glass Slipper from your discard on the bottom of your deck to gain 3 lore and it quests for 2. That's actually a decent effect, because I think the Glass Slipper is a decent card. It's unfortunately just way too slow and hard to set up. So not a card that I think sees super competitive play, but very fun, kind of, maybe more casual oriented deck that could play it. Mariano Guzman, Handsome Suitor, 3 cost inkable 3/4. While you have a character named Dolores Madrigal in play, this character gets +1 lore. So again, Madrigal specific stuff, and I don't even know if you'd play that in a Madrigal specific deck. Candlehead, 2 cost inkable dedicated racer 2/2 body, and whenever this character is banished, you may remove up to 2 damage from chosen character. So again, nothing too relevant. You got your Bolt for Amber, which is a 4 cost, so you probably don't want to shift your 3 shift Bolt on top of this. It does have support, and it quests for 2, but it's only a 2/4 body, so it's a common for a reason. Not something you'd probably play. Could probably good in draft though. Next up, you got Pascal, which is your Amber Amethyst hybrid character. The issue, like this card on the surface seems okay. 4 cost, uninkable, which isn't the greatest. 3/3 body, okay, sure for 4 is fine, but should have probably been inkable. Has evasive, nice. You can't make it inkable, give it evasive, and have it quest for 3, right? It would be just too versatile. But I would argue that you could do that for the simple fact that your 4 cost curve in both Amber and Amethyst, it's probably the most competitive 4 cost slot in the game. Because you have Rapunzel, you have Merlin Goat, Merlin Rabbit, potentially Genie. Like, what? Like, are you displacing any of those for another 4 cost card? No. In a budget deck, sure, but other than that, no. Right? Those other cards with their interplay effects are just way too strong. Next up, this is the way they're going with Amber Ruby, which, again, I can respect that. I don't necessarily think you need to print super meta competitive cards every time. I just would have liked to see this ink pairing really be elevated, given that we know that there are several competitive or somewhat competitive decks that could be made way more competitive if this ink pairing got what it needed. But yeah, we've got Racer support, which is the way that they decided to go here. 4 cost, uninkable, King Candy, Royal Racer. It is a 2/2 body, and you can't even use like the Sapphire King Candies to like shift on top of this or anything. Not that you'd want to anyways, because it already quests for 2. But whenever one of your other Racer characters is banished, each opponent chooses and banishes one of their characters. So being 4 cost uninkable and only a 2/2 body with that kind of ability, that's a super rare. It's gonna be one of those bulk supers, I think. Next up, you got Penny, 2 cost inkable, 1/2 body. That quest for 2, so a 2 cost card that quests for 2 with an ability could potentially be good. An Amber Steel card. When you play this character, you may remove up to 2 damage from chosen character, and they gain resist +1 until the start of your next turn. This card is actually decent. Like, imagine playing this on your turn 3, and then if you pass back to your opponent, it's going to be their turn 3. And then you quest with your Daisy Duck, but you gave it resist +1. Now a Fox interaction on the opposing end doesn't take out the Daisy. So you're able to get another quest in with Daisy potentially on the next turn because you gave it resist +1. Or you healed up a Daisy because maybe they threw something into it to try to take it out the next turn if you quest with it, and then you just throw this down and it gains and it heals it and it gives it resist 1. Seems like it synergizes pretty well with Amber Steel aggro. Again, we'll have to test and see, but this card looks like it could be something that's pretty good if you like that ink pairing. Next up, you got Fix It Felix Jr. Perfect card for location support, even though there's no locations in this set. 5 cost, inkable, 4/4 body that quests for 2, so right away. Looks decent on stats. Does it have a good effect? Whenever you return a Racer character from your discard to your hand, you may ready chosen Racer character. They can't quest for the rest of the turn. That seems not so great. But maybe there are some Racer specific stuff in Ruby. Sure there is. But the recursion ability is really an amber ink color ability. Like red doesn't really have character recursion. So if we don't see anything to recur Racer characters in the Amber section, I don't think we're going to see it in the Ruby section, and therefore you need other ways of recursion to proc this card, which you're just trying to set up too much to make this card viable, so not good in my opinion. Next up, we do have a card that is potentially pretty good for the puppy deck, even though the puppy deck probably isn't going to be super competitive anyways. But a 5 cost inkable, 3/7 body, Thunderbolt, the Wonder Dog, puppy shift 3. Pay 3 to shift this on top of any of your puppy characters, which is really good. And then it quests for 2, and it has Bodyguard. Getting a 3/7 Bodyguard that quests for 2 on turn 3 is very strong. This is maybe the best puppy card if you wanted to make this ink pairing work. which is silly, but like a card like this protects your non-engine cards, like your non-puppy cards as well. Like if you drop Hiram on 4 and you have a Thunderbolt up, like your Hiram is also protected from multiple challenges, and Hiram is already a tank at 1/6 as well. So like they have to get through Thunderbolt and they have to get through Hiram. And if they're not on like Ruby removal for like brawls and Sisus and stuff, like it can be pretty tough to deal with. Your Hiram is probably living for a while. Right? I mean, there's a lot of other things you can do. But the Amber Sapphire ink pairing, I mean, we know that that's a very deficient ink pairing in general because it doesn't have removal, or at least good removal. So how good can this ink pairing potentially be? I don't know. We'll have to wait and see, but definitely not super, super top tier. Next up, we've got the Prince, Vigilant Suitor, a 0/5 2-cost uninkable with Bodyguard. And it quests for 1. So this card is very interesting. I think this is a decent card. When I was thinking about this before, like, obviously just putting a body in the way that your opponent has to run multiple things into, most likely, before they can get to your aggro characters in like Amber Steel aggro or Amber Amethyst aggro or Amber Emerald aggro, could be really good. And it's not a broken card because it does have a really bad payoff in that, like, if this gets outed, you get nothing out of it. I mean, other than using up 2 interactions potentially on your opponent's side. It doesn't deal any damage back. It gets outed instantly by Ruby removal. But at least if they use something like a Brawl on it, they're technically losing tempo because you pay 2 for this, they pay 3 for the Brawl. So it prevents them from using an interaction that's actually more meaningful during that turn. But then again, if you set this up to try to protect your board and they have that answer anyways, and then they take out your board, you probably just lose. But again, this card can come down and be a big problem for your opponent. Sorry, took a sneeze there. But yeah, like Baloo can come down and be a big disruptor as well. I think Baloo is still better. Actually, I don't know if I'd say better. I mean, yeah, I know it is better because the lore gain is just too clutch. Like this card costing 1 less than Baloo. They're both uninkable. They both have Bodyguard. They're both 0 strength. They're both quest for 1. The Prince for 1 less ink gives you 5 strength. The Baloo only gives you 5 willpower. The Baloo only gives you 3. But the Baloo getting the 2 lore on banish, and you have to go through the Baloo before you get to the rest of the board, I think makes it better. But this card being 2 matters more because they do different things depending on the cost curve. Right, but this card coming down and protecting your board, just forcing interaction, could potentially be good. This is a decent card. Next up, we've got Isabela Madrigal. So this card looks flashy. 5 cost uninkable, 3/3 body. Okay, for stats like that, it has to have some really good effects. 5 cost uninkable and only a 3/3. So right away, what stands out is it quests for 4. That's pretty good. Whenever one of your characters sings a song, this character can't be challenged until the start of your next turn. That is a good ability, and it quests for 4. It's a 3/3 body. Plays around Brawl and Big Sisu. Does it do enough to warrant play? I don't know. I don't know if this would be better than the Gontu. Gontu is a 4/3. Quest for 4. Gontu is inkable, but it costs 5 as well. And it doesn't have a conditional effect to make it better. I think the inkability of Gontu just makes it better in the Amber Steel deck. An Amber Steel song, I don't think you need to play a card like this, which is obviously where it's going to get the most utility. I think you have enough in Amber Steel song to push for game as it is. Yeah, unfortunately, it's a decent card. I just don't think it has application right now in any viable deck. Amber, Sapphire, no. I mean, you're only playing a puppy deck for fun in that case. Amber, Amethyst aggro, you're not playing songs. Amber, Emerald, you're not playing songs. In the discard variation, I think in the discard variation, would you rather just play Flynn? And you don't even play Flynn in that deck, right? So yeah, I can't see a home for this right now, but still like an overall decent card. Next up, you got Calhoun, Courageous Rescuer, another Amber. Every time I see one of these Amber Ruby cards, I'm just like, my heart breaks. 6 cost, inkable, 5/5 body that quests for 2, so good stats. Shift 4, okay, good. Can't shift it on top of the Steel Calhoun though. That would have been nice, right? Actually getting some extra utility off of the Steel Calhoun. Whenever this character challenges another character, you may return a racer card from your discard to your hand. So, like at quest for 2, you don't want to be challenging with this. You're going to shift, go negative on card advantage to shift this out to challenge to get a racer from your discard to your hand. So this is the card that synergizes with the Fix It Felix, right? Get your racer back, Fix It Felix, ready up a racer, which to be fair, Calhoun is. But that's a lot of conditional things and very expensive conditional things to set up. Felix is a 5 cost. This is a 6 cost. You need to have a racer in your discard, which you probably do if you're playing this pairing by that point. But the odds that you survive to turn 6 against the meta, not happening. Really, they're going to put themselves in a winning position by that point that you're just going to not be able to get value off of that kind of combination. Casual decks, sure, fun, yeah. But competitive-wise, not the greatest. Next up, you got Wreck-It Ralph, Hero's Duty, 6 cost, inkable, 3/8 body with outflank. During your turn, whenever one of your other characters is banished, this character gets +1 lower this turn and it quests for 1. Not sure why that's a rare. I mean, 6 cost, 3/8 with a negligible ability, more or less. Yeah, underwhelming Amber card so far, in my opinion. Like, the Tramp is okay. The Aurora potentially would be okay. The Bolt just being a shift 3, 5 cost singer. I mean, you'd rather just play Robin Hood, unless the 1 cost, or if there is a 1 cost Bolt in Steel, because we don't have one in Amber here, is actually really good, but doubt that. Anyways, let's finish this off. We've got Lady next, Miss Park Avenue, a 5 cost uninkable 4/4, but it does shift for 3 in the Amber Emerald Ink pairing. So a 5 cost singer that, come out on turn 3, that's a 4/4 body. It's pretty good. Quest for 2, Something Wonderful. When you play this character, you may return up to 2 character cards with cost 2 or less from your discard to your hand. That is a very good ability. That is a very good ability. You don't have to play it on shift to get the ability either. You can just raw play this out at 5 or shift it and get the value back. And if we take a look here, we gotta go characters. Okay, we haven't looked at this Minnie Mouse, which is the other legendary, but this card is actually half decent. You're not reviving back a Lilo to your hand. You're probably not... The Tramp said cost 2 or less, right? Get back some daisies. Get back Piglet. Cindy, Wendy. I mean, I don't think you play this Lilo anymore, but maybe. Get back Bodyguard Simba if you want to go back to playing that. You got some new set 7 green cards, maybe. There's your Lady Shift, by the way, in green, so not in amber. Also uninkable, which is unfortunate. And it's, yeah, the ability here doesn't seem that great, so that hurts it a lot. Yzma. The Tramp. So again, we'll have to look at those and see if they're actually decent. Get back a Go-Go. Whoa, that's pretty good. Get back a Honey Lemon for a play and discard. And get back a Fred, maybe to force challenge to win the game. Gazelle to give evasive. Get back a Olivia for a big quester. Get back a Robin Hood for instantaneous lore gain. Clarabelle for item banish. Mother Gothel for the... And this is what's nice about these cards. You have the option to pay 3, so you get a 5 cost ability for 3. I mean, on a 2 cost card, you have the option to play. Get back a evasive Pegasus. This is the big one. Get back the Merfolks. Sir Hiss. This is another big one. Get back Ursula Deceiver. I mean, Enchantress maybe. and budget aggro variations. A lot of cards you can get back right now. And as I've talked about with these kind of generic cards like this, those kind of cards just get better over time. The biggest downside of this kind of card is that the one cost shift, from what I just looked at, doesn't seem very good. Again, I've looked at these cards already, but like, you know, go along with me here. So are you going to play this raw out for 5? Maybe. You get 2 cards off of it that cost 2 or less. It would have been really nice if you had a good shift. But such is life. Next up, we've got Pongo, Dear Old Dad. A 6 cost uninkable 5/5. So that's kind of serious. And you know, with pairing anything with Sapphire, you generally don't care about uninkability or the cost. So that's why these cards get a little bit more of a pass than other ink pairings, by the way, if you were wondering why I'm criticizing this number so much and the inkability versus when I look at Sapphire cards and see this. Yeah, it's much less relevant in Sapphire decks. At the start of your turn, you may look at cards in your inkwell. You may play a puppy character from there for free and it quests for 2. Super rare. That's decent for the puppy deck. Especially since with Sapphire, you may be ramping. And if you know you're putting puppies in your inkwell, first of all, you get to look at all your cards in your inkwell, which is just an overlooked ability probably right off the bat. You just, every turn, at the start of your turn, you pick up all your cards in your inkwell. Oh yeah, I inked that. Okay, yeah, I inked that. Makes it a little bit easier on yourself, right, to remember what you inked. And then you play a puppy for free. That's pretty good. Not that you'd ever do this or you'd build the deck this way, but when you play cards, obviously like Fishbone Quill, One Jump Ahead, Mickey, right? The cards that ramp you from deck. Like One Jump Ahead is negative card advantage for ink advantage. But then you can play a puppy character from your inkwell, so you get back that card advantage later on with Pongo in the form of a character that you play for free, which saves you tempo and develops a board state for you. Again, not going to be super competitive, but in the casual space, that's pretty strong, right? Because of those interactions. So you turn cards that ramp you into this card faster, so you get this out way before turn 6. And then because you went through negative, like you put yourself at negative card advantage to get to that ink level early, then you claw back that advantage with the Pongo, right? With free tempo, free characters you develop on board. Like imagine going into this Pongo and then, I mean, it has to survive a turn, right? Because the start of your next turn, you get the proc this ability. You play a puppy character for free, and then you shift this next. Now you have a Pongo questing for 2, a Thunderbolt questing for 2, and the Thunderbolt protects your Pongo and whatever else you have on board. Like, they need board wipes for that. Be prepared, basically, is the only thing, right? Next up, we've got Kenai, Protective Brother, a 4-cost inkable 2/4. At the end of your turn, if this character is exerted, you may ready another chosen character of yours and remove all damage from them. So again, not anything that's going to be super relevant. Very cute card, though, with the little bear. I don't even know what this movie is, by the way. But I think they both turn into bears or something, I guess, right? Because I think they both had cards in the last set. Anyways, we're almost done with Amber here. If you're still with me, thank you. I know this is going to be one of the longer videos because we're looking at all of the ink pairings with Amber, and we'll go back over some of them in the other ink pairings as well. Like when we go over Amethyst, we'll look back a little bit at the Amethyst Amber cards, but we won't spend too much time on them. Anyways, we've got Minnie Mouse. I'm happy to see Minnie Mouse finally get a legendary. 2-cost uninkable storyteller 1/2 body. Quest for nothing. Whenever you play a character, this character gets +1 lore this turn. So you play this character, doesn't matter that she has no lore, because the next turn you're going to play characters and then she'll gain lore to quest during those turns when her ink has already dried and she can quest. So, okay. Underwhelming ability so far, but she has a second ability. Whenever this character quests, chosen opposing character loses strength to this character's lore until the start of your next turn. So in aggro focused decks, this card is actually okay. Because when you think about how the cost curve develops versus other decks with you as an aggro deck. If you play this on 2, and then your opponent plays something, and then let's say you play 1 or 2 cards on 3 to give this character plus 1 or +2, you quest with this and you give something else -1 or -2 until the start of your next turn, which means that character that you develop early, which is likely, you know, a very weak character, doesn't have enough strength to take out your board. This means your Daisy Duck can potentially survive, this Minnie Mouse potentially survives, etc. Now, where these interactions fall down is against the most popular decks in the format. Anything Amethyst, turn 3 Fox, right, when they're on the play. And this is uninkable, so in Amber you basically are forced to play it. And then in Ruby decks it gets removed by like Brawls and Sisus and things like that. So you run into a problem that you ran into in the last set, Azeroth Sea, with like Oswald. Oswald seemed to be an even stronger character than this, and it didn't see any competitive play. This card, while it is decent, I think it is too much of a liability to make it actually work. Simply, again, Mim Fox eliminates so many cards from being viable. I mean, rush characters in general play around this, right? But yeah, it can be a problem. I don't think this sees competitive play overall, though. For 2, it's too much of a liability to play rather than something that's guaranteed value. Next up, we've got a 3-cost inkable Perla, Nimble Seamstress, 3/2 body, evasive and support, so combining the 2 unique abilities of both Amber and Emerald, but probably not going to see any play. Next up, you got Snow White, Fairest in the Land, 4-cost inkable 2/2. This character can't be challenged, but it is susceptible to every form of removal in Let the Storm Rage On, Strength of the Raging Fire probably, Brawls, etc. And it does quest for 2. The Shift Snow White. I really like the Shift Snow White, man. I really want that card to work. We need a better Shift Snow White, though. It shifts for 4. This should have cost 3 and been a 2/2 that quest for 2 can't be challenged. That would have, like, maybe then you play this. Like, you don't play this, though, now with this because it costs 4. If you give this 1 more willpower or 1 more strength so that it can play around one of the 2 most popular forms of removal in the Ruby and the Steel cards, it also would have been nice. But they made it that way for a reason. They didn't want it to survive those interactions because it can't be challenged. So that's fair. I mean, if you're not going up against a deck that's either Ruby or... Well, I guess other ink pairings do have ways to deal with it. You can bounce it in, like, green. Can't you? Yeah. You can put it into the inkwell with blue. But, I mean, this character could be a problem for non-Steel and or Ruby decks. Alright, next up you got Koda. Smallish Bear. 3-cost inkable 2/2 that quest for 3. So nothing super impactful there. Probably more of a draft card. Oh, this is one card I didn't see, actually. Because I would have mentioned this during the review of the first Mirabel. Okay, so let's see. You got a 6-cost dual ink in Amber and Amethyst. Mirabel Madrigal, musically talented. 2/6. Okay, shift 4. So obviously you shift this on top of the 3-cost Mirabel. And she quests for 2, so good. Super rare. Whenever this character quests, you may return a song with cost 3 or less from your discard to your hand. That is a very good ability. That is a very good ability. But is it good enough to play the Mirabel shift package? Whenever this character quests, so you basically want to shift her. 2 strength, very susceptible again to the Ruby removal. What are we doing here? We're going for type songs, and we want cost 3 or less. Bare Necessities. Painting the Roses. You're not playing those. You're not playing Painting the Roses in Amber Amethyst, though. You're playing it in Amber Ruby, potentially. Friends on the other side is really the only the most relevant interaction I can see here. Maybe Bosses on a Roll. Maybe Unfortunate Souls. This card is good. This card is good. Yep. Part of Your World? Nah. We'll get to this next video. Bare Necessities. This Is My Family. Friends on the Other Side. That's what I see right now. But as we know, if you're going to play an Amber Amethyst ink pairing, you're likely going aggro, so you're not playing songs. And obviously this is meant to be an archetype specific card for Madrigal decks, but who knows? You might see this card be played or tested. It has to shift though. It's too slow. It's too conditional. So probably not. But a cool card nonetheless. I love recursion cards. Anyways, 3 cost, inkable, Calhoun, battle tested, 2/4 body, tactical advantage, and it's eraser. When you play this character, you may choose and discard a card to give chosen opposing character -3 until the start of your next turn. Probably not too relevant. You really don't want to discard a card. I mean, it gives -3 until the start of your next turn, and at least it's on play, and it has 4 willpower. Only quest for 1 though, and it costs 3. I just think there's better cards to play on 3. You're not trying to control board state with Amber decks usually, right? So kind of underwhelming. Next up, we got Peppa Madrigal, 3 cost, inkable, 2/4 body, clear skies. Whenever one or more of your characters sings a song, gain 1 lore. So like Alanadale, right? If I remember that effect correctly. Sleepy's Flute in character's form, it is inkable, but not something you are probably playing, so pass on that. And then that's it for the characters. We're almost at the end here, going into actions next. So Much to Give, 2 cost, inkable song. Draw a card and chosen character gains bodyguard until the start of your next turn, sorry. So I mean, it's like Fortisphere, and we see how much that card is used for its bodyguard effect, like never. I mean, at least this card replaces itself, and it's a song. But if you're playing it in an Amber deck, you probably want to use your character to quest, not sing. And you're not playing this in Steel Song, really. I mean, maybe to sift through your deck, but for 2, I'd rather quest with my Smee, that kind of thing, right? Like, so probably doesn't see play. This card though, Restoring the Heart, 1 cost, inkable, remove up to 3 damage from chosen character or location, draw a card. This is a 1 cost draw action that potentially removes 3 damage from a character or location. Remove 3 damage from McDuck Manor in Amber Sapphire. Remove 3 damage from my Thunderbolt, because you're likely not taking this out in 1 turn. Maybe, but like if this survives, like this card being Amber Sapphire does hurt, because there's no way you could have printed this as a solo Sapphire card. You can't print this as a solo Amber card. It's not a song, so you have to like pay the 1 ink. But I mean Popsicle is still better, but like it's a good card. Unfortunately, it is in this ink pairing, which makes it balanced, actually. Next up, you got the song that Mirabel is supposed to sing. The Family Madrigal. Character with 5 or more can sing the song for free. Look at the top 5 cards of your deck. You may reveal up to one Madrigal character and up to 1 song and put them into your hand. Obviously, this can only be played in the Amber Amethyst ink pairing. Put the rest of the cards on top of your deck in any order. So there is that Amethyst song that we'll get to in the next video. That is good. As well as, like we mentioned already, things like Bare Necessities potentially, and Friends on the Other Side. But you probably don't play this. Well, actually, you don't play this in this Amber Amethyst Ink pairing unless you are playing a Madrigal deck, basically, because, well, I mean, it's a 5 cost card. I mean, it is a song, but like, do I really want to waste 5 on this or a singer on this? Am I even playing singers if I'm playing this ink pairing? For a Madrigal specific deck, sure, it's okay, but other than that, obviously, you're not playing it. So each of the inks got a coil similar to how they got what was it, Talismans or something in the last couple sets or whatever. This one unfortunately isn't great. During your turn, whenever a card is put into your inkwell, you may remove up to 2 damage from chosen character. I mean, it only costs 1, and it is inkable, and it is an item, so it has that going for it. Which for the Amber Sapphire ink pairing, you know, I shouldn't judge this. I mean, I judged this card pretty harshly when I first saw it. I'm like, oh my god, like another healing card that does nothing. Like, but it is a 1 cost item. I did kind of overlook that. And if you are playing like puppies or something like that, another 1 cost item that is just basically harem fodder could be decent. But again, the issue is like in isolation, this card is just bad still. But it is a 1 cost item that's inkable. So you see your harem engine. This is just feeding harem draws, which is always good. And it's good that this is an Amber. I mean, well, every ink pairing got this card, but it's good it's a 1 cost inkable item in Amber is what I'm trying to say, because it makes the Sapphire Amber pairing a little bit more viable, because obviously you're going to have to play harem. I mean, you don't have to play harem, but you should be playing harem. Harem and Rapunzel are probably your best 4 drops in that ink pairing. Next up, we got Spaghetti Dinner, which is basically Spellbook, I believe, right? If I remember. 2 cost uninkable. You have to exert and pay 1, so similar to Spellbook, but it's 1 less. Spellbook was 3 cost uninkable. But you have to have 2 or more characters in play to gain 1 lore. And Spellbook already was kind of like it was in there for the mirror matches back in set 2, but it was a tempo loss because you have to pay 1 ink every turn. This card you still have to pay 1 ink, even though this card costs 1 less. Spellbook was a rare. This is a common. But yeah, very different. Like you can see, I don't want to call it power creep because it does have a secondary effect that really limits it. But again, I don't think you play this even today. The Spellbook won't see play anymore. It's just too slow. Next up, you got a 1 cost item again for puppies. Canine Crunchies. Your puppy characters get +1 willpower. An item that, again, here, like, you know, I was calling puppies casual, but like maybe it has maybe it's at the top end of the casual decks right now is what I'm trying to say. Again, the downside of this is like, how useful is this really going to be in isolation? Like, not great, but it is a 1 cost item that has, you know, when you have puppy characters on board, you know, having them have 4 willpower, it's pretty good. 1 cost item that's inkable, ink it, or use it for harem. Like, overall, not the worst. So next up, we've got, oh, we're almost done here. We've got the Glass Slipper, and this card costs 2, is a rare item. You may only have 2 copies of the Glass Slipper in your deck. So this is our first iteration of something like a limit, like, well, obviously a limitation on cards, or like a ban list of like limited cards. And it makes sense, you know, Glass Slipper, you only have 2 feet, you should only have 2. This is a good card though if it didn't need to exert a Prince character. Banish this item, exert one of your Prince characters, search your deck for a Princess character card, reveal it to all players, put that card into your hand and shuffle your deck. So obviously you're supposed to search Cinderella, but you're really going to want to search Rapunzel. I mean, we could spend a long time looking at that one, at this one card if we really wanted to, but I mean, it's a Rapunzel search. You're probably not searching princesses in anything else, really. Because you need to use it with a prince, right? So first of all, I think we should look at what colors can even play good princes. You got Simba in amber. So okay, so you can technically use it with any ink pairing because you could play the Simbas. The prince, you probably don't play Prince Eric. You probably don't play Prince Philip, so you don't play this in amber emerald. I mean, could you play it in amber emerald if you're playing things like Prince John, Flynn Rider, and discard to get a search for a princess? Amber Ruby would be where I'd want to play it to search Rapunzel. It's the color combination that would need it the most. And there's nothing here that I would want to exert to make that card live. Like nothing here that I'd want to play in Amber Ruby, except for maybe Flynn. And I don't want to exert the Flynn to proc that card. I mean, I guess maybe Prince Eric, but that card already does not see play anymore. Steel is where you have the most princes that are viable, because you have like the Hercules stuff, Beasts, and a couple of Simbas. And then if we switch over to princesses, what would you want to search? In Amber Emerald, if you were going to play it, you could search the Koda. You could search Ariel, but you're not searching for another scry. The big thing is Rapunzel. That's what you want to search. There's not really any princes, I don't even think, in Amethyst, but if you were playing Amethyst, you can search out a Belle. Okay. Nothing in Emerald. Nothing really in Ruby either. And Ruby has a lot of princesses, obviously, because like Amber Ruby princesses was a thing. Got a couple of new things in Sapphire, but I don't think any of them are worth searching for. Like, you're not searching for the Belle, even though that's probably the best card in the ink. The new Belle. Yeah, you could search Ariel, but Sapphire doesn't have too many good princes anyways, too. So you'd have to rely on like the Amber princes. Same with Amethyst if you're going to go for that. Searching Ariel is actually pretty good. I think that's really it. So, wish you didn't have to exert a prince. Would have been a lot better if you didn't have to do that. And it is your enchanted as well, which is kind of cool. And it is uninkable. So you draw this without a prince, it's a dead card. And that does it. That does it for Amber for set 7. And yeah, it's a little bit of a longer video because, again, we're covering all of the dual ink pairings. But if you made it this far in the video, thank you for watching. Let me know in the comment section below what you're most excited about. Do you agree or disagree with any of my takes? What things did I miss in terms of like looking at combos and future potentials? That's going to wrap it up for this one. It's been a long video. Hopefully I'll see you in the next one.